Okay, so let's talk about distal tibia and talus somatic dysfunction. So when we're talking about each of these two, we're going to be talking about the relative position of one versus the other. So when considering how the talus moves relative to the distal tibia, we need to be thinking about the anatomy. We need to be thinking about the tibia and then the fibula, the talus in the middle that lives within the mortise that's created by the tibia and the fibula around that talus. In terms of expected motions, we would expect that with dorsiflexion of the ankles, the talus is going to move relatively posterior. It's going to move back into the mortise. And it's going to move relatively posterior with the distal tibia kind of hovering anteriorly above it. And then with plantar flexion, we would expect the talus to move relatively anteriorly while the distal tibia remains posteriorly behind it. In terms of evaluation, we would make an effort to contact the talus as best we can within the mortise using our index fingers, middle fingers, however it makes sense and however it's most comfortable. But I usually use my index fingers here. And then gripping the rest of the forefoot, you then have control over dorsiflexion and plantar flexion. What you're going to be evaluating is one side as compared to the other. You're going to be evaluating dorsiflexion first, and you're going to be evaluating for what kind of end feel you feel, and then plantar flexion. Now, sometimes your patient can try to help you, and you don't want your patient to help you, but sometimes they can help you. So it might help actually to go through dorsiflexion and plantar flexion a few times, helps them relax a bit so that you can get a better sense of restricted barriers and freedoms of motion. So as we're moving through those motions right now, I'm finding that in dorsiflexion, I'm hitting a little bit of resistance at the end of dorsiflexion on this right side while the left side continues to move in dorsiflexion. And then in plantar flexion, I'm finding that I have a little bit extra plantar flexion on this right side. That would suggest that this talus on this right side is displaced anteriorly. So our somatic dysfunction for our talus would be an anterior talus. Now, if we were going to change our frame of reference and instead talk about what would be the somatic dysfunction diagnosis for the distal tibia, we're just going to be thinking of where does the distal tibia lie in relation to the talus. So with plantar flexion, we're finding that there's additional plantar flexion. Our talus is anterior, our distal tibia is relatively posterior. So our diagnosis for the distal tibia would be a posterior distal tibia, somatic dysfunction, on the right. And in a seated position, we can further evaluate and confirm our somatic dysfunction diagnoses with a little bit more specificity by going 1 foot at a time. And same position or same hand position would apply for the hand that's anterior, but posteriorly now we can use the other hand and clasp around the calcaneus. And now we have a better proprioceptive picture in our heads of what the entire foot and ankle is doing, where the talus is and where is it moving, and what the position of the tibia and fibula are in relation to that talus. So as I'm moving now, I'm finding that I'm confirming that with dorsiflexion, I hit a restricted barrier around here, and then I'm getting plenty of plantar flexion. When I compare that with the other side, I find that I have good dorsiflexion, very, very good dorsiflexion, but with plantar flexion, actually completely passively, I think plantar flexion on this side is pretty even, almost the same as the right side, maybe a little bit less so. But I'd expect that with the improved dorsiflexion.